There is a specific kind of fear that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't slam doors. It doesn't whisper in the dark. It doesn't show you something monstrous. It simply replaces something, quietly, and waits to see if you notice. Tonight, we are not speaking about ghosts. We are speaking about the returned, the ones who came back after funerals, after accidents, after disappearances, after goodbyes that were supposed to be permanent. And we are speaking about memory. Not ordinary memory, but the kind that lingers in your bones when the world insists it never happened. Have you ever remembered something clearly? A headline, a disaster, a person's death, only to discover there is no record of it, no article, no obituary, no evidence, just you and an unease that feels like you're the mistake. What if you're not? What if something was corrected? And what if not everything corrected properly? Tonight, 6 confessions, 6 people who swear someone returned or something did. And beneath their stories, a shared fracture, a memory the world deleted, but not completely. This is episode 12, and before we begin, I want you to think of someone you haven't seen in years. Picture their face. Now imagine they knock on your door tonight. Not injured, not confused, just slightly off. Would you know? Or would you convince yourself it's just time that changed them? Listen carefully, because by the end of this episode, you may start questioning who has already come back and whether you were meant to remember the version that didn't. My name is Caleb Rourke. I grew up in a town called Briar Hollow, population 6,412. One high school, one grocery store, one long main road that curves around Miller's Creek, and one street that burned to the ground when I was 15. Except, according to everyone else, it never did. The street was called Ashbury Lane. I remember the fire clearly, not in fragments, not like a dream, clearly. It started in the Whitmore house, electrical fault in the attic. I remember the smoke rising before the sirens. I remember the way flames leapt sideways because the houses were too close together, 6 homes gone by morning. I remember standing barefoot in our driveway watching embers float like dying stars. I remember the heat on my face. I remember the sound of Mrs. Whitmore screaming her son's name. He didn't make it out. I went to his memorial. I wore a black shirt because it was the only dark thing I owned. His name was Evan Whitmore. I remember that with precision. So tell me why, when I returned to Briar Hollow last month, Ashbury Lane was intact, not rebuilt, not renovated, original. Paint slightly faded, lawns neatly trimmed, the Whitmore house still standing at the center. I thought I had taken a wrong turn, but the street sign was there, Ashbury LN. Green, reflective, unburned. I stood there for a long time, waiting for recognition. Nothing sparked. No charred wood smell, no structural difference. Just quiet suburbia. I knocked on the Whitmore door. It opened, and there stood Evan, alive, mid-20s now, same crooked smile. "Caleb," he said, "you're back?" My throat tightened. "You're alive?" He laughed lightly. "I'd hope so." I stared at his face. No burn scars, no trauma lines, just familiarity. "Do you remember the fire?" I asked. He blinked. "What fire?" "The one on this street." He shook his head slowly. "Caleb, Ashbury's never burned." Never. The word hit like a dropped plate. I walked the length of the street, counted the houses. 6 on the left, 6 on the right. The same configuration I remember watching collapse. But here they were, untouched. Listener, have you ever remembered something catastrophic, vividly, only to find no evidence it ever occurred? Is it possible for trauma to fabricate details that consistent? Or is it possible for reality to retract them? I went to the town archives, local newspaper microfilm. I scrolled back to the year of the supposed fire, Nothing. No headlines, no reports. The week I remember as smoke-filled covered bake sales and a weather update. Sunny skies, mild winds, no fire. I checked online obituaries. No Evan Whitmore listed as deceased. School yearbooks? His photo present in every grade. Graduated, college listed, career updates, a life uninterrupted. So why do I remember standing at his grave? I drove to the cemetery. There was no headstone with his name, but I remember its placement, second row from the oak tree. I stood there, staring at grass. I swear, the ground felt warmer than the rest. That night, I stayed with my parents. At dinner, I brought it up. "You remember Ashbury burning, right?" I asked carefully. My father frowned. "Why would it burn?" "It did, 6 houses." My mother set down her fork. "You used to have nightmares about a fire," she said softly. "Used to?" I asked. "When you were 15. For months." "I wasn't dreaming," I insisted. She looked at me in that way parents do when they're choosing between comfort and correction. "Caleb, nothing burned." I didn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., I walked outside, drove back to Ashbury Lane. Something pulled me there. The street was darker at night, quieter. As I stood near the Whitmore house for a split second, the air shimmered like heat distortion, and I saw it. Flames. Not blazing, but flickering faintly over the rooftops, an overlay. 2 versions of the street occupying the same coordinates, one intact, one destroyed. Then it snapped back. Normal. I stepped toward the Whitmore lawn. The grass felt brittle beneath my shoes, like ash. I crouched, touched the soil. It was cold, but my fingers came up gray. When I blinked, it was just dirt, clean. Morning came. I knocked again. Evan answered, sleepy. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Okay?" "Do you ever feel like something almost happened here?" He hesitated, just slightly. Then, "Sometimes. I smell smoke." My pulse jumped. "When?" "Randomly," he said. "Usually at night." He laughed nervously. "Probably just old wiring." "Old wiring. That's how it started." "What if it wasn't old wiring?" I pressed. He studied me, and for the first time, his smile faltered. "Caleb," he said quietly, "why do you keep trying to remember that?" Trying, as if memory were effort. "Because it happened," I said. His voice lowered. "Not this time." "Not this time?" The phrase didn't belong in casual conversation. "Not this time?" I repeated. He seemed to realize what he'd said. His expression smoothed. "I mean, it didn't happen, but something had slipped." That night, I dreamed of the fire again. Except this time, I wasn't outside watching. I was inside the Whitmore house. Smoke thick in the hallway, Evan shouting from upstairs, and someone else in the kitchen. Not rescuing, not panicking, observing, taking notes. When I woke, my room smelled faintly of char. Listener, what if Ashbury Lane burned? What if 6 houses were lost? What if a boy died and something reset it? Not perfectly, just enough, but not enough to erase everyone's memory. Because here's what I found yesterday. I searched for Ashbury Lane on a satellite map. It appears normal, but if you zoom in far enough, there's a faint discoloration beneath the houses, a rectangular pattern, as if the ground itself remembers a different foundation. And when I overlay older satellite images, there's a flicker. For one archived capture, the entire street is blackened. Then, in the next frame, it's restored. No construction, no debris, just replaced. So tell me, if a catastrophe is undone, does that mean it didn't happen? Or does it mean something decided it shouldn't? And why do I remember the version with fire when everyone else lives in the one without? Because here's what unsettles me most. Last night, I passed Evan in town. He looked at me differently, measured, cautious, as if I was the unstable variable, as if remembering is the anomaly. And just before he walked away, he said quietly, "You're not supposed to recall previous builds." Previous builds? That's not language from grief. That's language from correction. My name is Hannah Leclerc. My daughter, Iris, was pronounced dead for 4 minutes. She was born blue, silent. The room that had been filled with instructions and encouragement turned into something clinical, efficient, detached. I remember the doctor saying, "Time of," and then stopping, because she gasped, a sharp mechanical inhale like something switching on. They called it a miracle. They called it oxygen deprivation followed by spontaneous recovery. They called it rare. They never called it impossible. I held her against my chest and felt gratitude so intense it hurt. For years, she developed normally, walked at 1 year, spoke at 2, but her first full sentence wasn't typical. She looked at me, calm, analytical, and said, "This one is louder." I laughed nervously. "This what is louder, sweetheart?" She touched her own chest. "This life." Children say strange things. We dismiss them because we have to. But Iris didn't speak like other children. She spoke like someone comparing experiences. At 3 years old, she told her preschool teacher, the sky used to be closer. The teacher thought it was imagination. At 4, she drew a map, not of our town, of somewhere else. The streets were curved differently. The river ran in the opposite direction. The school was triangular. When I asked what she was drawing, she said, "The first version." I felt something shift inside me. "First version of what?" I asked. She looked confused. "Of here." Listener, if a child told you they remembered another version of the world, would you encourage imagination, or would you start listening more carefully? When Iris was 5, she developed a fear of mirrors, not screaming fear, avoidance. She would stand at angles so she didn't see herself directly. One night, I found her in the hallway staring into the bathroom mirror, but she wasn't looking at her reflection. She was looking slightly to the left of it. "There are fewer now," she whispered. "Fewer what?" "Copies." I felt my stomach tighten. "What copies?" She turned to me, calm. "The ones that didn't align." Align. That word again. Different house, different story, same language. "Where did you learn that word?" I asked. She shrugged. "I remember." "Remember what?" She hesitated, then spoke very slowly. "When I wasn't here yet." I couldn't breathe. She continued. "It was bright, but not like light, more like unfinished." Unfinished. The same word from earlier confessions. I never told her about Owen, about Ashbury Lane, about any of it. "I was supposed to pick carefully," she said. "Pick what? Which one to stay in?" Her gaze shifted back to the mirror. This one felt stable. Stable, like existence is a structure that can fail. I took her to specialists, neurologists, child psychologists. Every test normal. High verbal intelligence, strong abstract reasoning, no delusions, no trauma markers, just advanced cognition. That's what they called it. At 6, she said something that changed everything. We were driving past the hospital where she was born. She looked out the window and said, "That's where I almost didn't load." Load, not survive, not breathe. Load. "What do you mean?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. Then, "They almost closed this one." Closed this one. Closed what, Iris? "This world," she said simply, like it was obvious. "Why?" "Too many errors." Errors. She turned to me, calm. "The ones that didn't transfer correctly." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Transfer from where?" She looked confused again. "From before." Before what? Before birth? Before existence? Or before this version of reality? That night, she asked me something that still echoes. "Mom," she said, "do you remember when the ocean was on the other side?" "The other side of what?" "Of the continent." I laughed reflexively. "That's impossible." She stared at me steadily. "No, it was just earlier." I checked maps, historical geography. There has never been an ocean where she described. No tectonic shifts, no lost seas. But I felt something tug, a sense of almost recognition, like trying to recall a dream that fades the moment you reach for it. Listener, Have you ever felt nostalgia for something that never existed? A place you're certain you've been, but can't locate? Last week, Iris came home from school usually quiet. I asked what was wrong. "They corrected something today," she said. "Corrected what?" "3 people." My chest tightened. "What do you mean, corrected?" "They weren't matching," she explained calmly, "so they got updated." "Updated how?" She shrugged. "Now they feel right." Right, as if personality is software. That night, I checked local news. 3 students transferred to another district. No explanation, just gone. Iris stood in my doorway later. "You're starting to remember," she said softly. "Remember what?" "That this isn't the first time." My heart pounded. "First time for what?" "You." I felt dizzy. "What are you talking about?" She stepped closer, her voice lowered, not childlike now, not playful, measured. "You didn't keep the memory last time." "Last time?" "How many times?" I whispered. She tilted her head. "Enough." The air in the room felt thinner. "You chose this one," she continued, "but you forgot." "Chose what?" "This build," she clarified. "Build," the same terminology, across different people, different cities, different experiences. "Why would I choose this?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Because it was supposed to last." "Supposed to." "And is it?" I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she said something that has kept me awake for days. "Some of us remember the rollback." Rollback, like an undo command. "Rollback from what?" I demanded. She stepped backward toward the hallway, from the version where too many came back wrong. Came back wrong. And suddenly, every story aligns. The returned sister, the husband without reflection, the street that burned but didn't, and my daughter who remembers choosing this world. Listener, if reality has been revised, if this is not the first iteration, would you want to know? Or would you prefer the stability of forgetting? Because Iris told me something else last night, something I haven't told anyone. She stood at the foot of my bed, watching me, and said quietly, "They're watching for recall patterns." "Who?" I asked. She didn't blink. "The ones who manage continuity." Continuity, like we are narrative threads, maintained, adjusted, rewritten. And just before she left the room, she said, "Don't remember loudly." Before you turn this off, pause, take inventory. Your name, your age, the room around you. Say them quietly in your mind. Make them firm. Because tonight, you've heard 6 confessions. A sister who drowned and returned misaligned. A husband who walks without consistent reflection. A street that burned in one version, but stands untouched in this one. A child who remembers choosing her existence, a global blackout that may have been deletion, and a man who found proof of his own death. Different cities, different lives, same vocabulary. Rollback, transfer, iteration, stability. These are not the words of superstition, they are the words of maintenance. So ask yourself carefully, do you remember anything that doesn't fit? A disaster no one else recalls, a celebrity who died twice, a geography that feels slightly altered, a person who returned subtly wrong. Have you ever felt that brief, unexplainable thinning, like the world lost texture for just a second? If so, don't dismiss it, because corrections aren't always total. Some memory fragments persist, and those fragments are either errors or warnings. Tonight, when you lie down, pay attention to the moment just before sleep. There's a space there, a flicker, a transitional frame. If you feel like you're stepping sideways instead of downward, if you feel brightness that isn't light, if you hear a tone that doesn't belong to your room, remain still, observe, because attention stabilizes and stability delays correction. You are not just listening to these stories, you are participating in continuity. The more you remember, the harder it becomes to overwrite you. But be careful, recall too loudly, and you may be flagged. This is Mr. Haunting Whispers TV, where the returned walk among us, where deleted versions linger at the edge of perception, and where memory might be the only proof you survived a previous draft. If tomorrow feels slightly different, if someone you love seems subtly adjusted, if the sky looks just a fraction off, ask yourself one final question. Was this always the world you lived in, or is this the one that held? Good night, and if there is a brief silence after this ends, count it, just in case.
You've been listening to Mr. Haunting Whispers, where every truth leaves a scar. If the story unsettled you, good. That means you were listening. Subscribe and stay close to the dark, because the next whisper might be for you.